Okay, let's get right into it. Something pretty profound is happening across Europe right now. We are witnessing the continent's biggest, most significant military transformation since the Cold War. You could almost say we're watching a new kind of fortress being built, one based on a radical, new strategic reality.
And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. For years, the idea of Europe being militarily independent, strategic autonomy, was kind of an academic talking point. Well, not anymore. It's now a practical survival guide for a world that has completely changed.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to look at why this is all happening, the insane amount of money involved, how they're modernizing their forces, the industrial challenge they face, and what this all means for Europe's future.
Right, so why now? Why this sudden, massive sense of urgency? Well, the answer is that Europe is feeling pressure from two different directions at the same time, almost like a geopolitical pincer movement.
So on one side, you have an immediate, very clear threat. Intelligence agencies all over Europe are flagging the late 2020s as a period of extremely high risk from Russia. But then on the other side, there's a growing uncertainty across the Atlantic. There's a new understanding in places like Berlin and Paris that Washington's priorities might shift, meaning Europe has to be ready to handle its own security, no questions asked.
So how exactly is Europe responding to all this? Well, with money. Lots of it. We're talking about a record-breaking rearmament. The whole idea of the peace dividend after the Cold War, yeah, that's completely over. And the numbers, they're just staggering.
For decades, that big NATO goal was to get members to spend 2% of their GDP on defense, and a lot of countries didn't even hit that. Well, the goalposts have moved. The new target for most EU members is now 3%. And that single percentage point, when you're talking about the economies of an entire continent, represents an absolutely colossal amount of money.
And if you want a concrete example, just look at Germany. For the first time, its defense budget has blown past the €100 billion mark. This isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It's a huge symbol of Europe's biggest economy retooling to become its military backbone, too.
And of course, for the countries right on the front lines, the situation is even more intense. Nations like Poland and the Baltic states, who are right there on the border, they're pushing their spending up towards 4% of their GDP. They're not just arming up, they are literally building a strategic buffer for the rest of Europe.
This chart really sums up the new reality perfectly. That old 2% target used to be seen as a ceiling, something to aim for. Now, it's the absolute floor. It's the bare minimum you're expected to do. The new normal, what everyone is aiming for, is somewhere between 3 and 4%. This isn't a temporary spike, it's a fundamental change in priorities.
But, just throwing money at the problem is never enough. Europe is also kicking off this massive project to modernize its infrastructure. It's about totally rethinking how armies actually move and work together in the 21st century.
And a huge piece of this puzzle is something called military Schengen. Think about it. The Schengen area lets people travel freely across borders without passports. This initiative wants to do the same thing, but for troops and tanks. The idea is to get rid of all the bureaucratic red tape that could turn a quick deployment into a slow-moving nightmare of paperwork.
Now, all this modernization comes together in the Readiness 2030 plan. And it's not just about buying more hardware. As you can see, it's about a defense in depth. You've got a European air shield to stop missiles, a high-tech drone wall along the Baltics for surveillance, and a unified cyber command to protect things like power grids. This is what a modern defense strategy actually looks like.
Okay, so Europe is getting the money. They've got a plan for modern infrastructure. But what about the actual weapons and equipment? Well, this brings us to what might be Europe's single biggest internal weakness: industrial fragmentation.
Just take a look at this number. Across all the EU armies, they operate over 170 different major weapon systems. That means different fighter jets, different tanks, different artillery pieces, each with its own training program and its own supply chain. It's a lot.
Now compare that to the United States. The entire U.S. military operates fewer than 30 major systems. This comparison just lays bare the massive inefficiency sitting right at the heart of European defense. It makes everything more expensive and creates a logistical nightmare.
So the EU's proposed solution is a plan called SAFE, Security Action for Europe. In simple terms, it's a €150 billion loan facility, and its main goal is to incentivize countries to do two things: buy European, and more importantly, build major new hardware together. We're talking about things like the next-generation Future Combat Air System, trying to create a truly unified Euro arsenal. So when you put all of these pieces together, The cash, the modernization, the push for industrial unity, it becomes pretty clear that this is about way more than just defense policy. We're looking at a fundamental shift in what the European Union is and what it wants to be.
And all of this work, all of this spending, is pointing towards one very clear and ambitious goal. By the end of the decade, the EU wants to achieve what it calls full defense readiness. Basically, that means having the power and the capability to act on its own to protect the continent, period.
And this all leads us to the final critical question. You know that old saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. Well, Europe is now doing that on a scale we haven't seen in generations. But this new fortress comes with a very steep price. And I'm not just talking about euros. I'm talking about political will, societal change, and a whole new mindset. The continent is preparing for the possibility of war, but the real question is it truly prepared for the cost of that preparation?